the City of Chicago Director of Violence Reduction. Then we'll have Rosa Escareno, Commissioner of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. And then I'll come back up for comments and questions. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Norman Kerr, City of Chicago Director of Violence Reduction. As we close another weekend, we remain committed to an all-government response to address violence. That's our summer safety strategy, enlisting city departments, including Streets and Sands, libraries, parks, BACP, and others. In addition, we believe in an all-city response that includes community-based organizations, faith leaders, street outreach partners, and others. As we move into the summer months, we will remain steadfast in this collaboration and committed to Mayor Lightfoot's priority of reducing violence. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rosa Escareno, and I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. And as Mayor Lightfoot and Superintendent Brown have repeatedly demonstrated, Chicago's approach to reducing violence this summer is rooted in an all-hands approach. While the vast majority of businesses in Chicago are sources of good in every neighborhood, we know that problem businesses bring crime, nuisance, and other issues into the community. We also know that large gatherings at unlicensed nightclubs and other unlicensed business venues can pose serious problems throughout the city. At BACP, our partnership with the Chicago Police Department is critical to tackling these issues and ensuring public safety not only at Chicago businesses, but throughout every single community. Last July, as we first began to reopen from the COVID-19 pandemic, we created what we call the Large Gathering Task Force to prevent the large parties and gatherings that put our entire community at risk. This task force was combined efforts and resources from BACP, Chicago Police, Chicago Fire Department, and the Chicago Department of Buildings to make sure that we were using every single resource available to us. And even though we are finally out of the pandemic, the important work of partnership across the city agencies continues. While we are no longer looking for COVID capacity violations or enforcing face coverings, we are working hard to crack down on the illegal gatherings and other dangerous and unsafe conditions at licensed and unlicensed businesses. And let me just remind property owners across the city, residential or commercial, that you are ultimately responsible for any unlicensed business activity taking place at your property. Since last July, our task force has conducted nearly 1,000 investigations, issued 539 cease and desist orders, and issued 1,067 citations. This past weekend, the task force, again working in coordination with the Chicago Police Department, worked hand in hand. But we have our own Department of BACP nights and weekend enforcement alone, led by our Deputy Commissioner Ivan Capafali, conducted 155 investigations and issued 56 citations and 5 cease and desist orders. This includes shutting down 4 unlicensed event spaces. This is a prime example of how we need to work together as a city to combat the issues plaguing our city. It's not just the police department's job. It's all of us working together. This is why it is critical that the business community continue to work closely with us at BACP to ensure that their businesses are kept safe and that they're managing not only the inside but the outside of their businesses. This goes a long way to ensuring that we are working in partnership with the community. Again, we want to continue and welcome the partnership throughout the summer months. And our partnership with the Chicago Police Department, the superintendent, and the entire team here is critical to the overall safety of our city. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to the superintendent.
Thanks, Rosa. I think what I'll do now is just briefly go over a little bit of an update on the 2 shootings where we had multiple victims, and one in each shooting a victim is deceased. I'm going to go over the first shooting that's happened at 20 26 East 71st Street, where 5 were shot and 1 is deceased. In that shooting, what we do know now is, number one, our detectives are working hard interviewing witnesses and victims who are being treated, obviously, at the hospital from their injuries to get whatever information, as well as looking for any video, any camera, whether it's business and or pod, to show any harm. And shot randomly. And we also do know is, number one, we don't have a strong lead. We don't have a license. Asking the public, anyone who was there out that night that saw what looks like an SUV drive up. It was really dark. If they have a license plate number or any identifying mark on the car, or if they saw any individuals shooting from the car, to call our tip line, cptip.com. On the second shooting, located at 6245 South Artesian, where 11 were shot and 1 is deceased. We do know that's an internal gang conflict that has transpired over a year, and that there were individuals in the crowd that were targeted. One of the targeted individuals was struck by gunfire. The deceased innocent bystander that was shot and killed by these gang members seeking retaliation. And with that, and we do have a car that several witnesses identified. We don't have a license plate number at this point, nor do we have a description of the suspects. But we do know, based on interviews thus far, that it was gang related, a gang retaliation. For both shootings, our deployment strategy will adapt and obviously deploy around the gang conflict and do all we can, making stops, notifying known gangs, try to intervene in some ways with social services, street outreach, violence interrupters, all on the ground, helping us with this conflict. But it's been for the second shooting on Artesian. It's been an ongoing conflict for over a year, based on a shooting that happened a year ago. And with that, I'll take any questions. Yeah.
Patrick Smith from WBEZ. Why do you think we are seeing so many mass shootings, and are there specific strategies or actions you're taking specifically about, to address mass shootings in particular?
So the question was, I want to make sure, because you had your mask on, why are we seeing so many mass shootings was the question. The answer is too many guns, too many illegal guns in the wrong hands, and too little consequences for possession of illegal gun possession. So that's number one. Number two, too many violent offenders released back to our communities here in Chicago, particularly on the south and west side. That's number two. And too little consequences ultimately for violent offenders who are arrested, charged, and brought before the courts. And finally, we're not having jury trials in Cook County right now. We're likely one of the few parts of government that's not fully open. So, jury trials render justice for victims. And finally, I would say the reason why we're seeing so many mass shooting, we have strong advocacy in the courts for offenders and very little for victims.
It's my fault. I asked a two-part question. Is there anything specific the city is doing to address mass shootings in particular?
I'm going to start with the Chicago police officers. They're risking their lives in unprecedented ways. So far this year, 31 officers have been shot or shot. That's an unprecedented number. Last year's was a 79, ended the year in 79. We're outpacing that. So officers are running toward danger, but they're facing being shot at in unprecedented ways, similar to what you asked about mass shootings. That's another phenomenon that's different, where officers are being shot at a record totals as far as so far this year. And what we're doing from Chicago Police Department standpoint, we are recovering more guns this year, on pace to recover more guns this year than we ever have on record in Chicago. We're on pace to recover more than 12,000 guns in 1 year. That's a record amount of guns on top of last year's decade record of 11,300 guns. So, that's what we're doing, but we're not the courts. So officers can arrest and charge people that need to be held accountable in the court system, but the courts are where we get justice. And whether it's delayed because of no jury trials or it's inconsequential because of strong advocacy for offenders more so than victims, is the court make that difference. And the court sets the tone for offenders in the community, what they will and won't and will not do. If they think there's a significant consequences, they will not commit mass shootings or possess illegal guns. We know that. We know that's happened in other parts of this country, is that if you make significant changes to the consequences for illegal gun possession, our communities will be safer. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a great segue question about we're trying to get consequences for the most dangerous people in the court system. And you touch on a point that's in line with the broken windows type of policing, where if you police these low-level offenses, they won't lead to larger, mass shootings or other more serious crimes. But we can't even get serious consequences for people who are dangerous. So again, we are implementing any and all of our orders as it relates to large gatherings. We have deployment strategies, but that arrest, that violation is a low level offense that likely won't even cause any kind of impact in the community once the person is in and out of jail. So if we could just get the balance on strong advocacy in balance with offender rights as it relates to victim rights, we would be much safer in our community. Some of the crime that happens based on data, and we use data for 3-year analysis to know where we would deploy these 15 locations that we have. Our whole of government approach was based on data. So some of this is predictable, and we deploy around that. But things like what happened, the 2 mass shootings, one in the 3rd district, one in the 8th district, were unpredictable. These were just people sitting in chairs having a good time talking. They weren't doing anything to violate the law. There wouldn't have been a large gathering violation for either one of these that we would have had an impact on. And people want to be out. They've been quarantined for longer than a year. So we have to balance people's right to assemble, the constitutional right to assemble, with large gatherings are predictably have some chance of violence if there are gang members and gang conflicts with people shooting indiscriminately into a crowd, not worrying about innocent victims. I could go on longer with that question, but I'm trying to get to print, so with some of it. Yes. It's under investigation. We don't have an update at this point. Yes.
Mina Bloom with Block Club Chicago. Can you tell me what is the status of the Humboldt Park double murder investigation? This is the one that happened on the 19th, the one that was caught on video.
Right. So we do have more leads. We do have a strong offender. We just hadn't closed the loop on enough evidence to charge at this point. And as soon as we have that, we'll update you.
Last week, Mayor Lightfoot had said that she vowed to find who was responsible, and that there were promising leads.
There are. That's still
there are
accurate.
promising leads.
That's still accurate. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say
It's just not the show 48 hours. It's not. It doesn't close out when the show ends.
Okay.
A lot of work has to go into collecting the appropriate evidence so the charges will stick when we do file charges. So all of what Mayor Lightfoot said is still true. Yes.
Hi, Superintendent. Charlie Wojciechowski from Channel 5. A lot of what you've talked about are long-term solutions, changing the gun laws, changing the disposition of judges, more advocacy for victims. But you've got the 4th of July coming up here.
Yes.
You've got probably one of the most volatile situations the city can have on the precipice of happening. What can you do at this very instant to change the outcomes for the 4th of July and what could be a very violent?
So again, planning. Obviously, to the degree that we're precision deployments around predictable areas for violent crime. That's probably the more prominent policing strategy we have, as well as we do want to increase our contacts with the public, both offenders and the general public who need our presence to feel safer and to be safer. So we have to precision deploy using data, and we've done that this year, and we've had success doing that this year. But at the same time, we have to be even more present. And this really leads to, I don't know if anyone's going to ask a question about cancel days off and extended hours. That's one of the strategies for the predictably more violent weekends that we have. There's like 4 weekends that are predictably violent that Chicago Police Department has always done some type of overtime initiative to have more presence in the areas that predictably have more violence. And, you all know Memorial Day, Father's Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. Those are the 4 days. And so we try to, number one, deploy more officers during those times. And then at the same time, we actually need to interact with the community much more. We have clearance rates, which, by the way, we're on a 52%, 53% clearance rate this year for homicides, 15-year high in clearance rates and a number of homicides cleared. So again, it's a lot of hard work. But finally, I would say, without the brave men and women of the Chicago Police Department risking everything, the best laid plans are wrought with failure. We need our officers to be encouraged, that people in this city appreciate their hard work and service, their sacrifice, being away from their families, as well as their willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect the people of Chicago. Yes.
Superintendent John Garcia with Channel 7. Curious if you know the style of weapons used in either of these mass shootings and whether they may have involved extended magazines?
Likely, a lot of casings. We don't have the guns. Obviously, we would be speculating, but this is a commonality in mass shooting. High capacity for the guns, whether that's going to be an extended clip or a drum, which is a circular magazine that fits into the gun that adds increasingly high capacity, or a banana or a curved clip that goes into a rifle is a common feature of mass shootings. And what it does is, from a tactical standpoint for the offender, you don't have this pause to change out the magazine where people might intervene. You have this continuous rapid fire wreaking the most damage. And that will be something for, in my opinion, if we arrest a person in possession of a legal gun and they have with them a high capacity magazine, drum, or banana clip, or a high capacity rifle with the extension, ought to have more serious consequences, because that is what causes the multiple victimization of people when shots are fired without the need to reload. Yes.
Matt Masterson with WTTW. We learned this morning that Officer Evan Solano has been stripped of his police powers, that you acted on COPA's recommendation there. Can you tell us why you finally did decide to act on that?
I'm going to defer until the investigation is complete, but obviously we asked for additional information from COPA. We received that and reviewed it, and we've stripped him of his police powers. I don't have any further comment.
On another quick topic for you, you talked about encouraging officers and officer well-being this summer. This week will mark 4 years since the police union contract has expired. I guess, how vital is it to get a deal done on that at some point in the near future?
I would defer to the mayor's comments, which have been extensive on this topic. I likely not helpful to weigh in as they continue, hopefully, a negotiation to an agreement at some point. But I would just say, that's a long time not to have a contract. That's a long time not to have these brave men and women not compensated for their very hard work and sacrifice every day. So I would encourage cooler heads to prevail and come to the table with an agreement. Yes. We'll get that to you as a follow-up. Thanks. Any last questions? Yes.
Oh, you talked about precision deployments.
Yes.
Can you talk about where you plan to put the most people this weekend in order to prevent the violence?
So we have the 15 areas that we've talked about extensively for the whole of government approach. In addition, we have the lakefront, which is kind of a area where 4th of July people like to visit, and any and all other gathering points where we believe that we will have large gatherings. So we have pretty detailed plan we're going to discuss at some point in the presser. But I don't want to just give out a teaser